Hello, everybody, and welcome to Intro to APIs with our special, awesome guest host, Cory Althoff. I am Tiffany Webb. I work for Flatiron School. I've been with Flatiron for just about 3 years now, and I'm on the marketing side of things. And a part of my job is to host amazing events like this one, so that you can get a taste of code or APIs in this instance, and so that you can learn more about awesome guest speakers like Cory here. So I am going to just set a little bit of ground rules. Let's be kind. We're all here to learn. We're all here to have a good time. Be kind in the chat. Know that there are a lot of you and there is only one of me. So I will attempt to get around to all of your questions in the chat, but know that we might miss a few here and there. We might not get around to all of them. We'll give you some options at the end if you do have questions that go unanswered. And it's okay if you don't keep up. Keep watching. This is how you learn. Sometimes you learn by watching, sometimes you learn by doing. But we've got a good event on for you guys this evening. So I'm gonna just present my screen for 2 seconds, share screen, and just do a little blurb on Flatiron School. Let's see, should I put in presentation mode? Cory, are you able to see it in presentation mode? All right.
That's great.
Cool. So a little bit about Flatiron School. Flatiron was founded in 2012 in New York City, and we help passionate creative people learn the skills they need to launch their careers in tech in as little as 15 weeks. We currently operate campuses in Austin, Chicago, Denver, Houston, New York City, San Fran, Seattle, and DC. And we have a sister school named Secure Set Academy that operates in Denver and Colorado Springs, but the Colorado Springs only offers cyber. We have 4 career-changing courses: software engineering, which we'll be diving into today, data science, cybersecurity, and product design. We have flexible pacing options and campus access in select cities. One of the coolest parts about what we do is that we get our students jobs. We go through our program, we have one-to-one career coaching, and then we try to get you placed in a job within 6 months. And recently we just placed our 5,000th grad since the program started. So just really excited about that. And yeah, I am going to stop share and pass the mic over to Cory Althoff, your host and instructor for the evening. Cory, there you go.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you all so much for being here. Can everyone hear me all right? Is my sound okay? Good? Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. I got a lot of yeses. Very cool. Very cool.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was waiting for the chat to tell you. There we go.
Okay, cool. There's a little bit of a delay. So thank you all for coming. This is awesome. Today, we're going to be talking about APIs. I've got a little presentation for you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. So let me see if I can present. Okay, can everyone, it looks good, you can see?
Yep.
All right, welcome to my workshop, an intro to APIs with Python. I want to thank you all again for coming. This is awesome. And thank you, Flatiron, so much for hosting. Super excited about this workshop today. So what are you going to learn? Well, you're going to learn what an API is, and you're going to learn how to use an API to build a web app with video streaming. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey learning to code. So in college, I tried to learn how to program, but I failed. Actually, I had a really bad experience. I took a class and I dropped it within, I think, 1 or 2 weeks. It just wasn't taught well, and I had no idea what was happening. I could not keep up. And so I withdrew from the class. When I graduated from college, I majored in political science, and I struggled to get a job. I felt like I didn't have the skills that employers were looking for. So I was living in Silicon Valley, and I decided to try to learn to program. So I bought all the different books and courses. If you look on the right, that's the first programming book that I ever bought. It's called Think Python. It's still a great book. And I decided to give it a shot and dove in, and I started coding. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I want to focus mostly on APIs today. So forgive me for jumping ahead, but 6 months later, I got my first interview. And unfortunately, I completely bombed it. So I had my hopes really high. I thought I was going to do so well. My friend helped me get the interview. And afterwards, he was just like, "What are you doing? I thought you were good at programming." It was pretty embarrassing. I did really, really terribly in the interview. However, I went back to it, kept learning, and eventually, after 1 year, I did end up as a software engineer at eBay, which was an absolutely amazing experience. It was so cool going from a complete beginner and then having the opportunity to work on a team with all these really smart, awesome people and coding professionally. And of course, I was making significantly more money than I had ever made previously. And also just the confidence that came with that. Learning how to program and become a software engineer gave me a huge boost in confidence. It made me feel like I could accomplish more. And so it was definitely life-changing for me. After working at several companies in Silicon Valley, I decided to write a book about my experience. That book is called The Self-Taught Programmer, the definitive guide to programming professionally. And I wanted to give people a roadmap. So it has now sold more than 150,000 copies worldwide. And my Udemy course of the same name has 160,000 students, which has been crazy to see. I never expected that to happen, especially because I self-published my book. It is now available in bookstores in a bunch of different countries. I've signed publishing deals, but I started self-publishing it. And so I never expected it to happen. So it was really cool. 4 years ago, I also started the Self-Taught Programmer Facebook group, which now has over 60,000 members. And it's a community of programmers or aspiring programmers that don't have a computer science degree. Like I said, we have over 60,000 members. And here's a success story from the group, because I want to show you all that it's definitely possible to become a software engineer without a degree. So this is Victor, and he posted about how a year ago he had no direction, and today he's working at a major tech company in Python. And here is another success story from Dragon, who got a job as a programmer full-time, and that was life-changing for him. So it's definitely possible and happens all the time. There's a little bit of lag on when I switch slides, so bear with me. So what am I doing now? My new book, The Self-Taught Computer Scientist, is coming out in October, which I'm super excited about. It focuses on data structures and algorithms, which is really important to know if you're interviewing for a job as a software engineer. And I'm also working as a developer advocate at Vonage, which is awesome because I get to continue what I was doing with the self-taught community. I get to build community at Vonage and create resources for programmers, which I really love. So it's definitely my dream job and I absolutely love it. If you're not familiar, Vonage is an award-winning cloud communications provider that has a suite of APIs that help developers like you do things like send text messages, make phone calls, and more. And of course, we're going to be talking all about what an API is right now. But before I get to that, I just want to address something. Is a coding bootcamp right for you? So Flatiron is my host today, which I'm super grateful for, and they have an amazing program. Something I wanted to clarify, when I talk about self-taught programmers, I actually define that as just anyone that is learning to program outside of a traditional 4-year school or curriculum. And so I think that people that go through boot camps are part of the self-taught movement just as much as anyone else. I actually think boot camps are great. And we have someone at Vonage on our team that went to a boot camp. So I think boot camps can definitely be the right choice. I think it depends on a couple of things. How good are you at following sort of accountability? How good are you at keeping yourself accountable? A boot camp is going to help you stay accountable, right? You're more likely to actually make it through the curriculum. A lot of people, when they learn how to code outside of a boot camp, when they're just doing it sort of the pure self-taught way, they give up. So that's a huge problem. And so I think that is something that coding boot camps definitely address. I think there's a lot to be said about having the exact path laid out before you and having mentors. If you do it the self-taught way, which of course is a great way as well, it is really important to seek out mentors and have mentorship. So if you feel like you can hold yourself accountable and you can find a mentor and you can study the curriculum on your own and make that progress on your own, I think, going the self-taught route is a great option. If you feel like you'd rather spend more money, but not have to worry about finding a mentor, figuring out what the right curriculum is, all that kind of stuff, and you want someone to hold you accountable, then a bootcamp could be the right choice. It also has to do with your financial situation and things like that. So if you can't afford it, maybe it doesn't make sense to go a bootcamp route. And I definitely believe that anyone, even if you don't want to spend any money, can learn how to program given the right motivation and the right amount of time. I do think a bootcamp can cut down on the amount of time that it takes you to go from a beginner to a software engineer. So for me, I did it in a year, but I probably could have done it quicker. I will admit that. I probably could have done it in, I don't know what a realistic timeline is, maybe 6 months or 8 months if I had gone to a bootcamp. I do think that. So you have to just decide for yourself, you know yourself better than anyone. So how do you tend to give up on things? In that case, maybe you do need some extra accountability. So those are the kind of things that I would think about if I was making the decision on whether to go to a bootcamp or not, because I do think they can be super, super positive, but you can do it on your own too. So it's up to you to decide what is going to work for you. All right, on to APIs. So what is an API? An API stands for Application Programming Interface. And so an API allows 2 or more programs to communicate. The best way to explain this is to actually show you. So if you go to api.agify.io and then put slash and a question mark, name equals, and then your name, you can see an API in action, which is super cool. So this is an API that guesses your age based on your name. So replace Cory, that's my name, with your name, and it's going to guess your age. So I'm going to give everyone a little bit of time to go ahead and try that so you can see how it works.
And I've put the most of it with Cory's name in the chat. So if you need that information again, feel free to take it.
Cool. I'm going to give everyone just a little bit more time to try it.
While we're waiting for people to try it, there's a question. How do you gain credibility with without a bootcamp if you decide to take the self-study route?
Credibility? That's a good question. What do you mean exactly by credibility?
I think like if you're wanting to be a software engineer and you've taught yourself, like how do you get credibility when you're job searching?
Gotcha. That's a good question. I think that really applies whether you do ultimately end up to deciding to go to a boot camp, or if you decide to, oops, oh no, accidentally jumped ahead.
It happens.
So one sec. Sorry about that, everyone.
It's all right. There you go.
Okay. So yeah, I think that whether you go the self-taught route or decide to go to a boot camp, it's really important to do side projects. That's really the answer that I would give to that, is to build as many side projects as possible. Ideally, you would have a website that has your portfolio on it, and it just shows all the different projects that you've done. And that demonstrates to employers that you know how to program and that you can build things, and you can build things using different technologies. So I think that's super important. And The way I did it was actually freelancing. So I think either way, it makes a lot of sense when you graduate a boot camp or when you finish teaching yourself how to program to try to do freelance work. And so I came up with something I call climbing the freelance ladder. And the essence is basically starting with really, really small freelance projects, like $5 projects and $10 projects on a site like upwork.com, and then trying to move to bigger and bigger projects, because not that many people are going to be competing for a $5 project if it takes you like 2 days to do. But those projects are there, especially in web scraping. So I would take a look at web scraping, perhaps in Python, and start with a really, really small project and then work your way up so that you have a portfolio of work that you've done. So you can go into job interviews and say, look, I've actually worked professionally as a freelance programmer before. And then in addition to that, having a lot of side projects, you're going to look really good to potential employers.
Awesome. Thank you, Cory.
So one more thing I wanted to ask in the chat, anyone feel free to answer, but did it get your age right?
I will tell you, most people are laughing a lot because they're like, according to this, I'm 69, I'm 60. A few people said it was about a year or two off, but a lot of people said that I'm 30 years younger than what showed up.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I think anything within like 8 years is a win for this API, but I don't know that it will be able to get your exact age, but maybe the right decade. So today we are going to build a web app, and it looks like this. When I click, it keeps switching my slide. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And so here are some use cases for this web app: creating a custom teaching solution for a classroom, or making a custom experience for customer service. A bunch of other things that you could do with it, but any type of web app where you just want to add sort of your own custom video streaming and be able to put whatever features that you want. So you could create like a custom classroom where you click a button and a graph comes up, or really the sky's the limit. There's a million different things you can do with it. Bad use cases: it's not good for something like cloning Twitch or anything that requires a large amount of viewers. So you wouldn't want to have 1,000 people using this web app. That's not what it's meant for. And a few things before we start. So if you want to follow along, you need to have Python installed. If you don't have Python installed and you've never programmed before, it's probably better just to watch. I still think you can get a lot of value in watching what I'm doing. And I think that, yeah, so you can get a lot of value just by watching and seeing. Like, I'm trying to show you how powerful Python is, and you can see what it looks like to actually build a web app. And I'm going to go really slow and explain a lot of stuff, but you'll be able to see, like, what does it actually look like to write code, and what does the project structure for a web application actually look like. And you're going to be able to see all this stuff. So it's going to be really cool. If you do want to follow along, I'm going to try to go as slow as possible so that you can do that as well and give all the instructions, but you do need to have Python installed. But hopefully you'll get a lot of value either way. And a couple of definitions: a Python library is Python code that you can import into your software. Pip is a Python tool for downloading libraries. The command line is a user interface that lets you communicate with your operating system. A web development framework is a piece of software for building websites. There's two big web development frameworks for Python: Django and Flask. Today, we are going to be using Flask, which is my favorite web development framework. And lastly, we have environmental variables. And that is a variable stored outside of your program, often to hide sensitive information like an API key, which we will talk more about. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you're going to want to do is create a Talkbox account. So Talkbox is owned by Vonage. As you know, I'm a developer advocate at Vonage, and we acquired Talkbox and we use that for our video API. So if you go to talkbox.com/account/user/signup, you can sign up for a free account, and that's going to let you get an API key and secret, and you're going to need that for following along. So you're gonna
And
see,
that is in the chat box if you are looking for that link.
perfect. So you'll see a sign up screen that looks like this, and I'm gonna give everyone some time to get this filled out.
And if you joined after and are looking at the screen, I will drop it in the chat one more time so you have it. I also really love how interactive everybody's being in the chat. So thank you, and thank you for being kind. Kindness always wins. So, someone asked, can we do this in? Oh no, I don't know. We're gonna do it in Talkbox, but I'm not sure if we are able to do it in QBasic. But maybe you can follow along. No.
QBasic, I'm not sure what that is, actually.
Yeah. Oh, James, you're telling jokes. I'm not super technical, so sorry about that. But yeah, everybody, the Talkbox link is where you go.
Okay, so you're going to want to create a Talkbox project once you sign up. So if you click on the top left, it says projects, and then there's a plus sign and it says create new project. So you're going to want to click on that. Once you do that, you'll see a screen that looks like this, and type in my_project and then hit create. You should then see a screen that looks like this. Hit view project, and you should see this, and you should have a project API key and a project secret. So you want to leave this open in your web browser because you're going to need this if you are following along. Any questions in the chat?
Yeah, so someone says, do I create an embedded project?
Let's see.
And then someone also asked about the code C. I don't think you change anything there. I think you only change.
So just follow these exact steps. So don't change any other options. Just create a new project, put a name, view project. Don't do anything else. How does it seem like everyone's doing?
Better. Is it embedded or the other one is what I'm seeing? I'm not sure what that is. It's asking for project type.
I'm not sure. Start just if you're dealing with anything like that, literally just start over. Just create a new project. Don't touch anything else besides create a new project. Put in a name. Don't touch anything else. Create view project. So you shouldn't be changing anything or.
Yeah, it's looking. Yeah, I think some people are getting like the site slow because everybody's trying at the same time, but I think mostly it says it requires a choice for the new project. It may ask what type of project. I think that's like what people are getting stuck at.
Just do whatever the default is.
Yeah, do whatever the default. Do not change the code C. You see how the red box is only around the name, so just put whatever you want to name the project. Code C stays the same. You just hit next. All right, I think we're kind of leveling off. If you guys are having some trouble, it's okay to just watch and you can go back and follow along with the recording when it goes out tomorrow.
Yeah, and let me just jump on Talkbox really quick.
Okay. Code C, you don't change it. It just stays the way it is. So just leave that as it is.
Okay, let me just do this live as well.
Oh, codec. Sorry, Sean.
Okay, so doing this live just so that we can all get on the same page. Okay, I think this is where people are getting confused.
Got it.
I should add that in. Sorry about that. I apologize. So select your project type. I left this out. Create custom project.
There we go.
I'm sorry about that, everyone. And then from there,
Name your project, but don't touch preferred codec. Someone's already,
don't.
Someone has corrected me. So.
Yeah. Few projects. So sorry about that. I apologize for missing that step because that was a little bit confusing.
And thank you, Sean, for your encouragement. I appreciate it. You see, once again, I am not technical. I'm just code C, codec. There we go.
Okay, cool. So hopefully everyone was able to get their project API key and project secret. Okay, let's take a look at the app now. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is click on this link, which you should have in the document. And it links to github.com/calthoff/Vonage unlocked. So this is the repository for the web app that we are going to download. And when you click on the link and you go to this website, you'll see this is the README. So I'm going to be doing some setup, but all of the steps are in this document. So if you miss something, you can always look at this document to see exactly what I am doing. So we had to do a little bit of setup to get this web app to work, but it hopefully won't be too bad. So click on code, the big green button that says code, and then copy that URL. I'm going to give everyone a little bit of time just to navigate to GitHub.
And I placed the GitHub link. I did it one more time in the chat in case you did not see it. Click on
Okay,
code.
so green button, code, and then copy that link. Okay, so then next, you're going to want to open up your terminal. So for a Mac, you type in terminal, click right there. On a PC, I'm not sure exactly. I forget. I haven't used a PC in a long time. I think it's command line. I'm not sure. So you can do CD into the terminal and then type the name of the folder that you want to save your project into. So in this case, I'm going to save it to my desktop. I'm going to make this
Just so you know, we cannot, I can only see your GitHub screen if you're typing in someplace.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to change my screen share. Hold on.
Yep.
Can you see it now?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that. So all I did was type CD desktop. And so you can do whatever folder you want to save into. And so if you type ls, it shows you all the folders of the folders that you're currently in. I don't know how to word that, but go to desktop if that's the most convenient for you. And then you're going to type Git Clone and then paste that link that we copied and pasted earlier. So Git Clone. And then it should say cloning into Vonage unlocked. And then if you look on my desktop right here, it says Vonage unlocked. So if you're not familiar with Git, it's something you will learn at a coding bootcamp. And it is a language that you can use for version control. So basically programmers use it so that they can stay in sync with each other. So you're working on a coding project with a bunch of different coders. You're all making changes to the project. Use Git to make sure that everything stays in sync so that if coder A makes a change to a line of code and coder B makes a change to the same line of code, this software makes sure that everyone knows both lines of code were changed and allows you to decide what to do. Or if coder A changes some file, changes a file and adds some code, and coder B adds some more code to a different file, you have to merge those two versions of the project, and Git allows you to do that really easily. So a command like Git Clone downloads a directory, and it has all the files that make up a program. So this is what a website actually looks like. If you've never seen a website, this might be new to you, but it's just a folder like this, and it has a bunch of different files in it. So in this case, we have a readme.md. So if you click that, it will open up a file that explains everything that I mentioned earlier. This is the setup. And if you click app.py, this is a Python file. So this has Python code. And if you've never seen Python code, this is what it looks like. This is code. And Python is a programming language for those not familiar, but it's a really great programming language for beginners to learn. And this is what it looks like. And this is what a website looks like when you code a website. And there's other things in here. There's a folder and it says static, and there's a bunch of files in it. And so this is JavaScript, and that's a big part of the web. So when you're dealing with the web, you have usually a server that's written in something like Python or JavaScript, and then you have JavaScript files, which make a website interactive. And then you have HTML, which gives a website structure. And then you have CSS, which gives it style. And if you look right here, that's a CSS file. So it gives a website style. And then we have some HTML files right here. And so we're going to look at all of this and just see what's going on here and dive a little bit into how this all works. But first, let's get this set up. So we need to do a little bit more setup. So we need one more command. Make sure to cd into Vonage unlocked. CD stands for change directory. So cd Vonage unlocked. And that's going to put you inside of that folder in the terminal. So cd Vonage unlocked. And then if you hit ls, that shows you the different files that are in this project. So it's the same as looking at it like this, but from the command line. So you've got app.py, app.py, readme, readme, requirements. So you're looking at this from the command line. Okay, so now we are going to do a command pip3 install virtual environment. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time explaining what this means. Let's just follow along here, and we can save that for another lecture. So virtual env space venv is the next command. And that created a new folder called venv right here. And then type source venv/bin/activate. And right here, when we press enter, now it says venv. And that means your virtual environment has been activated. I'll do a very, very, very brief summary of what a virtual environment is. So earlier you learned that Python has something called libraries. And so that's basically other people's code that you're bringing into your code, right? So you're bringing other people's code into your code and getting all kinds of functionality that you don't have to write yourself. You don't want to download all of that code into your main Python environment. So you create something called a virtual environment so that they don't interfere with each other. Basically, all these libraries are capable of interfering with each other. And if you put all of them from all your different projects into main Python, it can cause problems. So you create a virtual environment so that all these different libraries that you're using are isolated. Okay, so is everyone with me so far? Any questions?
It seems we're pretty good. Some people are getting a blank screen, but I think we should keep on moving on and maybe worry about that a little bit later.
Okay, cool. So the next thing that we're going to do is pip3 install -r requirements.txt. So right here, we have this folder, and this is really common with not folder, this file called a requirements.txt. So this is sort of standard Python. Usually projects like this, these websites, they have a file called requirements.txt. And in that file are all the requirements for the project. And if you do pip3 install -r requirements.txt, then Python is automatically going to install all of the Python libraries that this project needs into your virtual environment. So if you hit enter, Python's going to install all the dependencies. If you hit the command cat requirements.txt and hit enter, this is just a text file that looks like that. And these are all the dependencies for our project. And if you do pip3 freeze, that command shows you all the dependencies that have been installed into your virtual environment. So in this case, they're the exact same. And that means that we've installed all of the dependencies for this project and that we're good to go. All right, so bear with me. We have one final step. Earlier, you learned about environmental variables. So we're going to be working with OpenTalk, and you grabbed an API key and an API secret from the OpenTalk website. So an API key and an API secret let a website know, let an API know your identity. So for example, for a lot of APIs, you can't use it as much as you want. You can't just go and make 1 million requests to that API because that costs them money. And so they need to know your identity. So earlier we looked at the Ageify API, and that was free. And you could make requests to that without a key. But if they wanted to limit the amount of requests, or if they wanted to make you pay, so say they wanted to make you pay to use their API, they could make you get an API key and an API secret. And that way, when you send a request, when you go into your browser and you go to the Ageify website and you put in your name, that's called making a request, they won't allow you to get any data back unless you have an API key and an API secret. And you don't want other people to have your API secret. And so you keep it in an environmental variable, which means it's stored on your computer. So this is a website, right, that we are building. And when it's in production, this website would be on a server. And the server would have access to its operating system. And that's where these environmental variables would be stored. So typically they're just in a file. It might sound complicated, but really all we're talking about is storing variables in files on a computer and then being able to access that. And you don't want to store it in your code because, for example, you might put your code on GitHub and then other people could see it, and that would be bad because you don't want people to see your API secret. So Vim is a text editor that just allows you to create and edit text files from the command line. So if you do vim.env, make sure you're in your project. That's super important. Hit enter, and it will create a new file for you. And then what you need to do is copy and paste your API key and your API secret into this file. So you need to replace your OpenTalk API key with your API key, but make sure to keep the quotes. And then replace your OpenTalk API secret with your OpenTalk API secret. So I'm not going to use my actual one because it's secret, but it should look something like this. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to get caught up.
All right.
Any questions? While we're
No,
waiting?
no, everything is pretty good. People are asking for the commands that you use, but it's also, everyone is being very helpful in the chat and saying it's on the GitHub link, so I reposted that.
Okay.
So we should be good on the questions. Do you mind if I run a quick poll really quick, Cory?
No,
It's
go
just
for it.
one question. While you guys are like finding your key, I'm just gonna launch this. If you guys could just take 2 seconds and just let us know. This is just to help Flatiron School better understand what kind of pacing options people would be interested in if they joined a program. So, or if you're not interested in bootcamp, but you are very interested in Cory, that is important. Yeah, right. So just want to get a sense of this. So just gonna let it go for another, 30 seconds and I'll close it. Mindy, yes, it's a paid online in a time frame. So we either have 15, 20, 40, 60 weeks of teaching people how to code. If you don't want to take the same amount of time, Cory took a year to learn, which is super impressive to teach himself. But we do it in a more truncated amount of time. So just wanted to, ask you guys that question. I'm going to end the poll in just 10 seconds. So if you can just click, we should be good. All right, a few more came in. Thank you guys. Back to you. Sorry to bother you.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so then once you've done this, you press escape, :X, and then that will save. You could also do this using a text editor, but it's more fancy to use the command line. But if you literally like opened up Microsoft Word and did it, that would work as well, as long as you named it .env, and it has to be inside of the Vonage unlocked folder. If you do ls.-a, you can actually see hidden files using the command line. And if you look right there, it says .env. So this is the kind of stuff that I didn't know and was really hard for me to learn when I was becoming a software engineer, was all this command line stuff. So if anything, I hope that this workshop was helpful just for giving you a sense of the command line and how it works and the different things that you can do with it. For example, ls shows you all of the folders and files in a directory. cd allows you to change directories, so you can do cd vnv. ls ... goes back one level, and cat, or whatever you want to look at.
Someone asked, how do we save our .env in Vim?
How do you what? Oh, how do you save it? Yeah,
Yes.
So :X. So cat, if you do tab, it auto completes, which is also really cool. So you can do cat r tab, and then it automatically fills it out for you. So that's another cool thing. But yeah, this stuff really confused me when I was learning how to code. So I hope that this helps all of you. Okay, so if you do cat and then .env, you should see something that looks like this. So make sure that you copied and pasted from the website, from the OpenTalk website, because otherwise your app will not work. Okay, so the final thing, that's all the setup you need. So now, if you do, make sure that you are in the correct folder, you're in Vonage unlocked. If you do Python app.py and press enter, your code should then work. It won't work for me because I put a made up API key and API secret. I'm going to use Pycharm because I'm going to do some live coding and I want to use their auto correct because it's going to make my life a lot easier. So if I run this code, so Pycharm is an IDE. It's an interactive development environment, and there's a bunch of different IDEs. Python comes with its own IDE, and this one's just a little fancier. So if you go to 127.0.0.1:5000, it should say, please log in. It should also print that address when you run your Python code. So you should be able to just click it right from there, the way I did here. And let's take a look at our app. Go to /admin, and you can say, what is your name? My name is Cory. And then I'm going to open a new tab. And I'm going to go to /join. I'm going to say my name is Cory too. And I now stream to myself. I will spare you the audio, but you can also chat. So I'm going to open up a join really quick, and I'm not going to talk, but I'm just going to show you that. So that is the app. And so it's pretty cool. You can change your name too. So anything you change your name to when you do admin, it should appear. So if you use your own name instead of Cory, then in that purple thing, it should say your own name. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to get caught up. Any questions?
I am looking through the Q&A. Oh, this is for me. You can turn off the transcript on, it should be on the top of your page. It should say live transcript has been enabled, and I think you can disable it there. So sorry about that, but there are people who need that. So you can turn it off on your screen so that it doesn't show. Stuart wants to know, can you explain the 127.0.0
Yes.
is your own host, and you list the port after the phone?
Yeah, so that's your local host. So it's basically, you're running a server. Flask comes with a server. We're going to learn all about Flask in a second. And it allows you to basically set up a website that runs on a server that only you can use from your own computer. So basically, you can only use that server from your own computer. So it's a website, but only you can use it. And it's for just developing things, basically testing stuff out.
Awesome.
And if you wanted to put this into production, then you would use something like AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, and you'd actually create a real server, and you would set it up so that that server is connected to a domain name. And then that's how that would actually work.
And someone said, what IDE do you use?
Pycharm. So I use Pycharm. That's what you can see on my screen right now.
Could you create this API via any given browser, not PC or Mac, but through a mobile device?
Create this API.
Yeah, like could you create an API on a mobile device? I'm guessing no, because you need terminals and such.
Yeah, people have asked this in my Facebook group before. It's pretty hard to code on a phone. Some people have done it. They've taught themselves how to code using a phone, which is really, really impressive. It's really hard. So I don't recommend it. If it's your only option, then I definitely applaud you for doing that. And that's really cool. But I would try to, at some point, just get the cheapest laptop I possibly could, because that just makes your life a lot easier. It's pretty hard to do.
And then one other question, and then we can keep going if you need to.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Stuart wants to know, I'm also thinking similar to JREs in Java, if a new push of Python library breaks the code, you need to revert, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And you can use Git to do that. You basically use version control to revert back to a previous version of your code. So that's another huge use of version control, is basically like everyone is publishing new versions of the project. And if something goes wrong, you can revert back to previous versions. Okay, so I'm going to open up idle just to show you. If you type in idle, this is the IDE that Python comes with. And so it looks like this. And if you hit file, new file, then basically you can say print hello world. And then that's how that works. But you can go ahead and create a new file like this, but create it in your actual, when you save it, when you save your file, save it into Vonage unlocked. And then when you want to run it from the command line and do Python and the name of the file, so that you're in your virtual environment and it actually works. So I hope that makes sense. So basically you want to, I'll just show you really quick. So open up idle if you're going to follow along with what I'm going to do. So file, new file, file, save as, and then save it in Vonage unlocked. So I'm going to call it test.py. And then now from terminal, I must have saved it in the wrong place. Weird. Okay, desktop. Okay, so I just saved it in desktop, test.py, and then I'm just going to drag it into Vonage unlocked. Okay, now when I do ls, you see test.py. I still have my virtual environment activated, so this is going to work. And then when you want to run it, you can say Python test.py. And if we wanted to say print hello world, and then file, save Python test.py, then weird. Why did that not work? Oh, because it saved it in here again. Drag and drop into there. Python test.py. And now it printed hello world. So if you want to follow along, just make sure that you're saving your Python file into Vonage unlocked and that you have your virtual environment activated. And then you should be able to follow along with what I'm doing. If you don't want to follow along, that's fine. You can just watch, and I think you can gain some valuable information. So in Pycharm, I'm going to create a new file, new Python file, and I'm going to call it live coding. I am not going to add it to Git. Okay, let's do some live coding. First thing we're going to do is from Flask import. Wait, that was backwards. From Flask import Flask. So earlier we learned about Python libraries. And so Python libraries allow you to use other people's code. So we're going to use something called Flask. So this is Flask's website. It's really cool. It's a web development framework, and this is the documentation for it. It allows you to create websites super easily. So I'm just going to show you how Flask works. So you can define a variable called app and assign that to Flask. Then you pass in underscore name. I'm not going to go into what that means. And for the case of our project, static URL path equals or gets blank quotes. I'm not going to go into what that means. Just copy that if you're following along. Okay, so that creates a Flask app. And then you can set debug mode to true, which does some useful stuff like printing out error messages. And then app.run. And that will run our app. But we have to do a little more setup. So if we create a function and we call it index, if you're not familiar with functions that are same as math, remember in math, you have a function and basically there's an input that gets given to a function and then it produces an output. So that's the same thing. If you're not familiar, it's a big thing that you will learn if you decide to go to a coding bootcamp. So in this case, we are going to return hello world. Remember, functions return something. And then we're going to do some magic code. Doesn't matter how this works, but this is some magic Python that allows you to map a URL with a function. So essentially, this is a slash, which is the home page. So this tiny little bit of code combined with all this lets us map a URL to a function, and whatever this function returns, see it says return, whatever it returns is going to get printed on the website. So let's see if this works. We're going to run this. Going to run this again. Go to that localhost website, and it says hello world, which is super cool because look, I mean, this is barely any code and it was super easy. And with just that, we were able to make a website that has a server and everything, and it says hello world. So pretty cool stuff. I mean, Python is just so powerful. It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines of code. And now, even if you don't know how to program, you know how to change a website, and you can edit a website, and you can literally now make it say hello world with a ton of exclamation marks. So super powerful stuff. We're going to copy this again twice. And in this case, we're going to make it say /admin. And in this case, /join. We're going to change this function name to admin and this one to join. And then here we're going to say admin. And here we're going to say join. Now /admin is mapped to this function, which produces admin, and /join is mapped to this function, which produces join. And so now when we go to our URL, it says hello world, but if we go to /admin, it says admin. If you go to /join, it says join. So maybe try editing these two things so that you can see how to make changes to this code and you can experience it for yourself. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to make changes and run it again. And does anyone have any questions so far?
Yeah, just so you know, some people were having an issue with the API key into the terminal. Is there any way to like just quickly go back on that? If not, then we can just have them rewatch.
Yeah, sure. So people are having problems with their API key.
Yeah.
What about it?
they typed their API key into the terminal and it didn't work from there, and they're just a little lost.
Okay, yeah, no, we can go over that again. So make sure that you hit ls and that you see all of this stuff, because you need to be inside the Vonage unlocked folder. Okay, then vim.env. When you do that, if you think you've done it correctly, then it should look like this. If not, you need to make it look like this. So API underscore key in all caps, space equals, space, quotation, your API key, quotation.
Just Leanne writes, sorry, it's .env. Was there anything else that you put in your
Nope, just .env. So vim space .env.
Got it. I just typed that also. Okay.
Okay, so then you have to make sure it saves. So you on a Mac, you press escape, colon. So you should see that colon right there. Then X, enter. Now, if you do cat.env, then you should see that. And it should look exactly like that, only with your API key and your secret.
Oh, she sees it now. Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Of course, now when you do Python app.py, your code should now work as long as your virtual environment is activated. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is in our code, we want to grab our environmental variables. So we're going to import one more library, and we're going to say from config, from decouple, import config. That allows us to grab our environmental variables. So we're going to say OpenTalk API equals config and then OpenTalk secret config OpenTalk secret. So that basically just grabs the variables from your environment so that you can then use them in your code. Okay. So let's take a look at one of these templates. So let's look at admin.html. So this is what HTML looks like. And it's super simple. This is CSS that all this does is give our website style. And this is a form that submits data. So let me show you on the actual.
There's a quick question. Doesn't the environment variable names have to match with the .env file?
Yeah, did I do that wrong?
Sean, did you do that wrong? Just asking. Sean wrote that in the.
Oh yeah, sorry. That was great. It should be.
Good eye, Sean.
Yeah, I did that wrong. Thank you for that. It should actually be that. You're very correct there. So yeah, whatever you put in your .env file, this needs to match. So great catch. Thank you. All right, I know people are following along now, so that's awesome. Okay, so let me just run the actual live version really quick. That's actually working. So I want to show you what we're talking about. So if I go to /admin, that is what this HTML creates. So basically, this is some CSS and it says body, background color, coral, and a bunch of other stuff with this style. This is the form which is this, your name and submit. And so what this does is send something called a post request to the home page and passes the data that you type in. So if you type in Cory, then when you hit submit, this code right here sends a post request to the home page, and it includes what you typed in. So what we need to do is allow our app to accept post requests and GET requests. So there's more than two, but the two that we're going to focus on are post requests and GET requests. And we're actually not going to get super deep into that, but in web development, there are post requests and GET requests. And basically that allows your web page to, from one page to the other, send information. It's not the best explanation, but in this case, if you have a form like this with HTML, you use a post request to send information to the server, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do is say, if we need to also up here add request and render template, which we're going to use later. So if request dot method is post. So don't worry if you don't fully understand this, but in web development, again, we've got post request. And so we're just saying if request dot method is post. If so, this function handles everything that happens. It's all of our logic for what can happen in this section of the website. So if you go to this section of the website and you send a post request, then we're going to do something. That's what the if this do that code does. So no worries if you don't fully understand this. I won't go too deep into it, but if request.method equals post, then we're going to do some stuff. First, we're going to check if they are the admin. This isn't how you would do it in a live production website because it's super insecure, but for demo purposes, we're going to say admin equals false. That's a variable that we're defining. And if admin in request.form, admin is true. So basically, this looks a little complicated, but when we do this form, when we fill out this form, our HTML sends data to this function, and the data is inside request.form. And so here, ID equals admin and name equals admin. So that data is inside request.form. So we can say if admin in request.form. So basically, is this data coming from admin.html? That's what we're doing. So we're saying if it is, then admin's true because our admin is signing in right now. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to say name equals request.form. So remember, all the data from this form, all the data from right here is in request.form. So we're going to say name gets request.form name. And finally, we're going to then return render underscore template. So this is a part of Flask that's built in, and it accepts the name of an HTML file. So in this case, we're going to put index.html in quotes. And so if you go to templates, you will see that we have 3 HTML files: admin, which we've been taking a look at, index.html, and join.html. Join's really similar to admin. And then you have index.html, which looks like this. So it's a bunch of HTML. And so when we pass in index.html into render template, it actually creates the it tells our server, okay, we're serving the user our index.html. Okay, so this is the last line of code in index. So if you're getting if this is a little past you, don't worry. The last thing we need to do is just pass in some variables to render template. So if you go to index.html, if you look at this section, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables that we need to pass in. API key, session ID, token, name, and isAdmin. And so we're going to pass that data and into our function, and then everything should work. So it's okay if you don't understand exactly how this works, but the point is you can do really cool stuff with Python really easily. And I just want to give you an idea of how all this works. So it's not super important to understand every aspect. You can always learn that later. So we're going to say isAdmin, and that links to this right here. So isAdmin, we need to send that information. And we also need a comma. And then we put admin. Okay, name. Well, we got the name right here. So name. Token, I'm going to skip that for 1 second. We need session ID and API key. So API key is easy. We're going to call that OpenTalk API, which we defined right here. Okay, so now we need to use Vonage. So from OpenTalk, import client. So this is the OpenTalk SDK, which does all of our video magic. So we're going to say client gets client. And so that is a client object from the OpenTalk API. So this is the OpenTalk SDK, which allows us to use Vonage's API to do all of our video magic. And this is why this is super cool, is because it's only going to take us a few lines of code, and we're going to be able to add video to our website. And that's the power of APIs, is that you don't have to actually write it yourself. You have someone else doing all the hard work. You don't have to figure out how to actually make video work. If I was going to sit there and do a tutorial on this right now, it'd probably take like a month, and it'd be like 1 million lines of code or something ridiculous, more than a month, like 6 months. Like it just wouldn't be possible. It's so much code. So Vonage provides you with this API that just makes everything super easy, and you don't have to worry about everything. So I need to actually move that right there. And then we just have to pass in OpenTalk API and OpenTalk secret. And now we say session ID equals client dot create session, and then session ID. So the way the Vonage video API works is there's a thing called a session. So you create a session, and then you can publish video to that session, and you can consume video from that session. And use the method create session, and then that gives you a session ID. And so our HTML needs that to make our video magic work. So we've got this session ID now, which is a few lines of code that allows us to connect to Vonage, create this session, and then get its ID so that we can connect to it with our HTML. And then we just need one more thing. We need a token. So we can say token, and we call client from right here, dot generate token, and we pass in a session ID, which we created right here. And then this gives us a token. So you've got a session, right? And it has a session ID. Everyone that connects to that session, so say you have 10 people that are using this website, they all need a unique token. So in this case, we create a token every time someone goes to our index part of the website. So every time someone goes here, and we're going to change this to please log in. Every time someone goes to this part of the website, we create a new token for them. And then we're going to pass our HTML that token. So token gets token. And then the final thing is session ID. Okay, so now that we've passed our HTML, so this allows us to pass data to our HTML. And we're passing all this data to our HTML. And this should now work. The final thing we need to do is in admin, return render template admin.html. So when we go to /admin, this is telling Flask to display admin.html. And when we go to /join, we render template join.html. So it's telling Flask to render join.html. Okay, so when we run this, so for you guys, do API key and API secret, but I actually, in my environmental variable, I named it this. Okay, let's try again. Please log in /admin. Hello. And it works, and hopefully it works for you. So that's how the Python works. And the cool thing is, look, it's literally 40 lines of code with some spaces, so even less. And even if you don't know how to code, hopefully you were able to vaguely follow along and see just sort of what coding is like. So this is what coding is like. It's not a whole bunch of math or super complicated stuff. It's a lot of moving information around, moving data around, passing data from HTML to Python and passing data back from Python to HTML, mapping URLs with logic and deciding what happens when you go to /admin or you go to /join. So it's really not as complicated as people think, but this is web development. This is what you do as a web developer. And you need to learn HTML, you need to learn JavaScript, you can learn Python and CSS. And once you learn those things, you can create websites and you can make it do whatever you want. And it's super powerful, which is awesome. If you want to understand more about how this works, you can dive into index.html. And basically it stores those variables right here. And then if admin is true, it calls this admin_video.js file, which you can find in static admin video.js. And that's a little bit of extra code, some JavaScript. I'm not going to go into how that works. And you've got your style.css file, which gives this website style. And then you've got video_video.js, which just does some Vonage magic with the API, but it's only very a few lines of code. It's super short, and it basically just connects from the front end to Vonage. So not a lot of code to make this work. I mean, this is pretty powerful. You have your own live streaming, and that's all there is to it. There's not much code. You can do a lot with just a little bit of code these days by using APIs. So it's really cool. And I definitely recommend using APIs in your side projects. So are there any questions, first of all?
There are a few. Let me turn on my ring light because I sit. Ooh, that's bright. I've been saving a few in the Q&A, and if you guys do have questions, definitely ask them in the Q&A. That's probably the best place for me to see it right now, as the chat moves pretty fast. So right now we have like 6 questions. Are you good to answer a few?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the Q&A. Let's do that. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Cool. Juan wants to know, what tools do you recommend to test APIs and generate a fake API with dummy data?
Postman. Postman's a great tool for that.
All right, Postman, just the way it's spelled, right? One word.
Yeah.
All right, I put it in the chat. We have a question. Can you give a guide on how to land a coding job without a degree?
Yeah, so that's what I talked about earlier. And so you can rewatch the
Yeah.
recording. I won't go too far into this, but I definitely talk about this for like 5 minutes earlier in the recording. So basically do a lot of side projects and do freelance work. Start with small projects, work your way up.
Awesome. For the scope of this call, are you talking web-REST APIs? Is there such thing as an API for or within an operating system of like Android, iOS, Windows?
Yeah, that's a good question. So generally APIs are REST APIs. So I'm trying to think if there are anything else kind of on the spot, but mostly everything is like a web-based these days, like REST API, because you need to be able to communicate with a server, right? So that's why generally everything is over the web. But I never like to just like give a definitive answer because there's always other ways of doing things. But definitely like at this level of programming, I would think of everything as a REST API that's REST is basically a standard for creating these type of things. And yeah, APIs are generally done over the internet.
Got it. Juan has two questions. So first one is, so no blueprints are required for the templates of what we were showing. This is probably 10 minutes ago, so I don't know if that's helpful.
I'm not sure exactly what you meant. Flask has a feature called blueprints, but it's pretty advanced and it's outside of the scope of what we were doing today. So not sure otherwise what that
would be. And then his follow-up question is, Flask request extends / overrides normal Python request library? Question mark.
Yes. Well, it doesn't override it, but request, though there is a library called requests in Python, but you would have had to, it's not, I don't think it's built in. I think you have, is it built in? I'm not sure. But it's its own thing. It's a separate part of Flask. I don't know if it uses requests like internally, it might, but what we were doing was importing, we were using requests from Flask, not just the request library in Python.
Got it. Mateus wants to know, should I learn Django or Flask?
I like Flask way better. I think it's starting to get adopted more and more. I really dislike Django personally, but for employment purposes, I think a lot of people still use Django. But as a beginner, oh man, Flask is so much better because it's just way simpler.
Gotcha. Samuel wants to know, is the free Vonage account a trial? Will we need to pay to use this API in the future?
Yes, but it gives you, it's not a trial because you didn't have to enter your credit card or anything. It just basically just gave you $10 in free credits. So you get up to $10 in free credits. And then after that, if you want to keep using it, you would have to pay.
Okay. Sorry, I feel like this is like speed question asking.
Oh, no worries. I love it.
What books do you read to master a certain language? Like any suggestions?
Oh, you can read my book, of course.
Yeah.
The
I'll put that in the chat.
If you want to do Python, some other good books. I really like The Pragmatic Program. That's my favorite programming book. And, there's a lot of really great coding books for Python. There's Learn Python the Hard Way. There's Automate the Boring Stuff. There's lots and lots of books, but those are maybe some good places to start.
Awesome. And Mindy says, what's the big difference between those coding languages in Python? So the coding languages Mindy is familiar with are HTML, CSS, Java, and C.
Yeah. So HTML and CSS aren't really programming languages, actually. They often get called that, but they are structured query languages, or no, that's I don't know. They are markup languages or something. There's some other word for it. So there you go. But you don't have like full logic within HTML and CSS. So CSS just gives a website style, and then basically you're just pairing things, basically like saying background red, background yellow, that kind of thing. You can't say like, if this happens, then do this, which is what Python and C and JavaScript can all do. And same thing with HTML. Basically, you just have these tags that give a website structure. So you can say like input, or you can say H2, which creates a title, but you can't say if this happens, then do this, and a bunch of other stuff like that. So there's no logic in HTML and CSS. HTML gives a website structure, CSS gives it style, and then Python, C, and Java, JavaScript, those are all similar. The difference would be, first of all, for new programmers, how easy they are to learn. I always tell people to learn either Python or JavaScript. They're a lot easier to understand in my experience and everyone that I've ever taught. C is a really bad place to start. And that's really old school thinking in terms of teaching people. So there's a whole, C allows you to do things that you can't do in Python because it's more low level, right? So you can do all this kind of stuff, like basically like you can do stuff in memory. You can affect your computer's memory by using C. In Python, you don't have to do that. That's all abstracted away from you. And so some people will say like, oh, it makes sense to learn C because you're not going to be a real programmer if you can't do all this memory management and like do all this low level kind of stuff. But that's just, I think we're moving past that argument because it's just so bad. I still see it like on the internet, but it just literally makes no sense to start with C because you're so much less likely to actually successfully learn how to program that it's just ridiculous. And like, like a lot of schools and universities, I mean, that's been my big criticism. Thankfully, they're moving away from it. And, boot camps have really pioneered this, like starting people with Python, starting people with JavaScript, and then schools have had to catch up. But it makes absolutely no sense to learn something like C because it's so much harder. And the whole like argument that, oh, you're not a real programmer unless it doesn't make sense. So anyways, but other than that, C, Java, Python, JavaScript can all do similar types of stuff. It's just a matter of, especially with C versus Python, like how low level it is. And so, yeah, but those are all powerful programming languages that can do everything essentially, that you could do in a programming language.
Awesome. I have two more questions for you, and then there's one for me, and then, in an effort to respect everybody's time, we'll probably close it at that. Is Python used in game engines like Unreal?
Yes.
All right. That was an easy one. And which is better for, I don't know if this is a word, OOP, Python, or C++?
Yeah, the sensor object-oriented programming. And, Python is an object-oriented programming language, and so is C++. I don't have any experience with C++, so I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question, but I would imagine they're approximately the same because you can do this. I'm sure you can do everything and both that you would from an OOP perspective. Also, I'm fine with staying like 5 extra minutes if we want to.
If anyone else has questions, we've kind of exhausted the Q&A.
Oh, okay.
But this one's for me, Alex, and I'll read it out to everyone. Flatiron School bootcamp specific question. Your site states that graduates have lifetime access to curricula and the school's online platform and lifetime access to career services. The student doesn't successfully complete a bootcamp for whatever reason. Will they have access to curricula and platforms? I understand that the access to career services would end. This is a little like, this is such a very complex question. You do have access while you're in the program and when you graduate. I'm unsure, and I don't want to give you wrong information. If you leave midway through and let's say there's a refund, like what you would get out of that. So I put in the Q&A a link to our admissions rep. You can literally schedule 15 minutes with them and work through that answer with them. But I would hope that you would still be able to access some of the curricula or some of the videos and stuff like that if you wanted to teach yourself.
Yeah. Can I address a thing in the comments? Yeah. So people are having a great conversation about basically like C versus Python, and what David and Juan are saying are true. Like there's definitely, I didn't mean to say that there's not like a time and place for C. Like Python is built in C. And so definitely like there are points in your career where it would be helpful to know C and to be able to like, program in C. That's certainly like, there's a time and a place. So I was more talking about for beginners, like the first like year plus of your career, it doesn't make sense. And then once you know a language like Python or JavaScript, then moving on to C and really understanding how things work at a low level is super smart. It just doesn't make sense to start with that. So just wanted to clarify that.
Everything that I've read C is a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
To learn. All right, Samuel wants to know, do you recommend coding in a virtual environment? If so, why?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you're talking about Python virtual environments, but as I was mentioning earlier, when we were using those, it's good practice to always use a virtual environment because you don't want your libraries to conflict with each other. And so you want to have all of your libraries running in a virtual environment, and then that's nice and isolated, and you don't have things that are conflicting. So definitely always do that. Yeah.
Stephanie wants to know, were you working full-time while teaching yourself? What kind of bandwidth did you have? Because this is a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, so that is a good question. I was not. No, I was not working full time. It was right out of college, and I was living at home with my parents, and I had some savings from college. I actually sold a website in college, like a blog that I started. And so no, I was not working. So I was lucky in that regard for sure.
Got it. Are there any other questions? If not, I just want to say, Stuart in the chat, thank you so much for your kindness and offering up to help some people via email. I love that about the coding community, that you guys are always willing to help each other, watching, the chat throughout the entire time, and seeing you guys help each other and give each other some of the commands, the command lines as you were, Cory was moving forward. I just think it's such a special thing, and it's one of the best parts of what I do, is just watching the community build. So I just want to say thank you, Stuart. And no offense taken. There was no offense taken to anyone. I think it's wonderful to watch you assist everybody else. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you to Cory for taking time out of your busy schedule. Congratulations on your second book. And I will be sending out a link in the follow-up email. There will be about 5 books that I will I bought from Cory, and I will be seeing if people want it. So look out for that link. And thank you all for being here and being kind and being helpful. This is what we love to see. Hope to see you guys at another Flatiron.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I'd also love to connect with you all on Twitter. So I'm
yes,
Cory
let
Althoff.
me give you.
So yeah, it'd be great to connect with you guys. I'm trying to post a lot more. I'm doing a lot of writing right now, a lot of blog posts and stuff. So yeah, at Cory Althoff is my handle, and just send me a message. I try my best to respond to every message. And so yeah, it'd be great to connect with all of you. And also thank you so much for hosting me. This is awesome. Flatiron is awesome, and really appreciate it. So I'll let you do the final wrap up.
Thank you. I almost forgot, Cory. Sorry. I dropped your Twitter handle a couple of times in the chat, but yes, awesome. Definitely amp yourself up. That's what we have. That's what we do here. But yeah, thank you guys. And I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your evening or day if you're in tomorrow. Yeah, we hope to see you at another Flatiron School event soon, and be safe. Cheers.
Thank you all. Thanks so much. Have a great day.